Wow, this got pretty existential.
Yes.
It did, yeah, it got deep.
Yeah.
Speaking of which, so this is for a podcast called Fiction Predictions.
Mm-hmm.
And basically we're trying to figure out all the books, TV shows, or movies of the past that somehow managed to predict the world that we live in today.
Yeah.
What do you think of the name?
I think it's good. Yeah, but I'm glad you clarified what it meant. I wouldn't have known just from the title that it was. But now I do.
Fiction Predictions.
Well, thank you for having me. My name is Stephen Merchant. I'm a writer and director of a new motion picture called Fighting With My Family, which follows the true life story of a young woman called Paige, who comes from a real life Norwich wrestling family. The family dream was to get their kids into WWE, which is the big leagues for wrestlers, but only Paige got signed and went off to Florida at the age of 18, 4,000 miles from home, to try and live this family dream for herself and for the people that she left behind.
Okay, one thing, I really enjoyed the film, by the way.
Thank you.
One thing that stood out to me is obviously you've got some actors playing fictional characters, you've got a lot of actors playing real life people, essentially.
Yes.
And then you've also got Dwayne Johnson playing himself in there as well. And I was just wondering, from a writing perspective, like, how does sort of writing a purely fictional character compare to writing someone that's based on an actual person?
Well, there are different challenges and different limitations. So one of the benefits of having real people that you're basing it on is obviously you know how they speak already. You have a real sense of who they are because I went to meet the family, I hung out with them, I could phone them up and ask them questions about how they were thinking, what happened in their life. So a lot of the kind of questions that you have when you've got a fictional character in which you're making that stuff up. Let's take, for instance, David Brent in The Office. A lot of time was spent deciding where he's from and what did he do and what's his life. Even stuff that didn't make it into the finished script, but you want to have answers to those questions just so you understand the character. These people already have a life, and so a lot of that stuff's already done for you. And also, of course, you're writing about real people, so you feel an obligation to them. You want to do them justice, particularly when they're a wrestling family who, if they're not happy, could break your legs.
Yeah, particularly with The Rock or Dwayne Johnson. I never know whether to call him Dwayne Johnson or The Rock. Or
DJ.
DJ, yeah.
You're friends with him, I guess.
Yeah, you call him DJ.
I don't think we could get away with
No,
that.
probably
I'd
not.
rather you call him Mr. Johnson.
Mr. Johnson, yeah. When you're writing his part, because he comes across as like sort of a mentor kind of figure in the film, but like, how does that work? Do you have to run sort of every line by him, or do you work quite closely on how he's going to be portrayed? Because obviously he's playing himself, so it's quite a weird kind of dynamic, I
Well,
guess.
he was involved in Paige's real life story, and so the scenes that we dramatise involving him are based on stories that Paige and he told me about what had happened for real. And so, again, you're using the true incidents as your jumping off point. I might take a little bit of artistic license because I wasn't in the room, so I don't know exactly what was said. But the stories are based on truth, and so you kind of write a version of how you think things unfolded, and then Dwayne, DJ, sort of, he called me up and he was like, well, I felt like we should do this and did this, and he had notes and thoughts about it, because he was there, and so it becomes a sort of collaboration in that way. And Dwayne is Dwayne, but he's also at times playing The Rock, which is more of his wrestling persona, and that stuff I can't write for him because that is him, his own magnificence. So I just, in a sense, I didn't quite, but I may as well have just written Dwayne does The Rock here in brackets, and then he just goes off and does his own thing, because you can't write that stuff. That's
Right.
all coming out of his own noggin.
It's interesting, this concept. I've always been fascinated by this idea of celebrities playing themselves in a way. And obviously, like you said, it's kind of different in Fighting With My Family to how it was in Extras. And it's interesting that you mentioned like them playing kind of exaggerated caricatures of themselves. And I guess the reason we were interested to bring it up is sort of, particularly on this podcast with the idea of fiction predictions, is I kind of thought that celebrities, in that, particularly that concept in Extras you had of them playing like these caricatures of themselves, I almost thought, and I don't know what you think about this, but it felt like it foreshadowed in a way how some people act on social media. So almost this idea of like on Instagram, on Twitter, Snapchat, the stuff we put out is quite curated, and And it's almost this, some people find success almost from drilling down into a particular aspect of their character and maybe like dialing it up to 10 almost. So like and you're obviously getting instant feedback in the form of retweets, etc. So I notice a lot of some actors and some, regular people just sort of doing this on social media, this almost caricaturing themselves.
Right.
And I guess what I wanted to ask you, sort of what you thought about that, and I guess to what extent you think social media means we're always sort of playing some kind of version of ourselves?
Well, I've always been a big fan of movies and TV and entertainment from a young age. And I was a fan before I was ever in the business. And, if you look back at the kind of in the 30s, 40s, 50s, Hollywood stars were very inaccessible. You saw them in movies and you saw them in magazines, and that was it. There very rarely were there. I mean, there wasn't really any TV talk shows until the sort of 50s and 60s. And so, someone like Errol Flynn or one of those kind of movie stars from the 50s, they were very remote. Gary Cooper, and so you'd occasionally get these pictorials, and it would be them in their Hollywood mansion, and it would be them diving in the pool and them having a cocktail. But it was all very staged and very, very manufactured. In their true lives and their decadent behavior or their sexuality, all that stuff was kept from the public, right? And and then what happened is over time, celebrities became more and more accessible. And, in the 80s, they were sort of being hounded by the paparazzi. And, you had Tom Cruise coming out of every building he left. There was camera crews outside of it. And it feels in a way now we've almost come full circle where the audience demands access to their favorite stars. And so they have to be sort of on social media or seen to be connecting and being honest and being themselves and sort of and breaking down the walls between them and us. But actually, they're curating their version of themselves just like those old 50s stars did. They're not really presenting themselves, because who wants to do that? Who wants to just let you see every nook and cranny, every wart of someone, right? So now on social media, in a way, it feels like it's those old 1950s magazine cover spreads where, it's Errol Flynn in his Hollywood mansion, and it's sort of now it's kind of celebrities in their Hollywood mansion, and then it's non-celebrities trying to look like they also live the life of celebrities, right? So it's sort of, I was reading a story the other day about someone in Russia. You can pay to have an hour sitting in a private jet with your friends, so you can just take photos of you drinking champagne in a private jet. Now, presumably, the people that you're posting that to, your 14 followers, know you don't have the money to fly around in a private jet. So I don't know who you're fooling. It reminds me of when I was at school. This kid came into school. I did not go to a fancy school, and I did not have fancy, wealthy friends. This kid came to school, and he had what appeared to be a Rolex. He's like, yeah, got a Rolex, no big deal. And we're like, wow. And then it very quickly became clear it was a knockoff fake Rolex, because he couldn't afford a Rolex. Just like, well, you've got a fake Rolex, and we all know it's a fake Rolex.
Yeah.
So again, who are you fooling? And so, and so it's a sort of strange, it feels like a slightly strange time where, celebrities and non-celebrities are presenting this idealized version of themselves on social media, right? I don't quite know where that will lead us, but...
Well, what's your idealized version? Like, what part do you create when you go on Twitter or on Instagram?
It's slightly different for me because I come...
ideal in real life. So
I was going to say, because I'm from the comedy world, I guess you use it in a slightly different way. Is I actually like, I like showing my own hopelessness in so many different ways, in ways that can be funny. And like I did a post recently about, which is true, about how hard it is for me to write in hotel rooms because I can never get a desk that's high enough. Like your desk here is too low for me. And so I have to construct kind of writing desks when I'm working from a hotel room with sort of ironing boards or drawers and, cushions, and I have to build these things. And that's true. So it's a sort of playful little insight into my life. But of course, again, it's just a segmented version of part of my life. It's not like I'm on there, and I'm giving you every moment of my day and every thought I'm having, So I think you still sort of curate it. You're still policing it, even if you're being funny, even if you're, I don't know. So, and maybe I'm interested to know. Maybe you feel like that's a mischaracterization. Maybe you feel like people are much more honest and truthful about in their social media. Maybe they are. I don't know. Do you feel
I'm
that's
not.
true?
No.
Do you feel like you're presenting a kind of
Yeah,
version
I
of
mean,
yourself in a way?
Yeah, to my 14 followers, yeah, sure.
Right.
But I think everybody has to, right?
Well,
You
I
can't-
think so
you can't
because
show it all.
But otherwise, you're just living your life like an open wound. I mean, it's everyone's got their
Desperate times.
demons and their issues, and no one wants everyone to know their true self, do they?
No.
No.
Wow, this got pretty existential.
Yes.
It did, yeah, it got deep.
Speaking of which, so this is for a podcast called Fiction Predictions.
Mm-hmm.
And basically, we're trying to figure out all the books, TV shows, or movies of the past that somehow managed to predict the world that we live in today.
Yeah.
What do you think of the name? We thought about it long and hard. We think it's a brilliant
Fiction prediction.
name. Yeah.
How many editions of the podcast have you done?
This is going to be the first season.
Okay. I think it's good. Yeah, but I'm glad you clarified what it meant. I wouldn't have known just from the title that it was. But now I do, and I'm
It's not
intrigued.
too late to change it.
And so,
You
what
haven't
have
been-
you identified as what are some great examples of some fiction doing some predicting?
Well, before we let you know, do you want to give us your fiction prediction of
Anything that pops into your head?
Let me think.
Sorry, putting you on the spot a bit here.
Yeah. Well, I guess I'm immediately thinking about sort of things like movies like 2001, A Space Odyssey, which has a very sentient computer, essentially AI, that is kind of interacting and both with the pilots of the spacecraft and is kind of in control of the spacecraft, and then of course famously, spoiler alert, begins to take over the spacecraft and begins to bump off the pilots, the astronauts, which is one of those very real concerns people have now about the power of AI, right? That what limitations do you put on this on AI? We're only years away from computers being able to seemingly think, and they will have processing power way beyond any human. And they can presumably figure out every possible eventuality, and so, it's a very real concern, right? About what limits do we put on computers and their capabilities.
Yeah. Speaking about the rise
I
of...
keep going to very dark places in your podcast. I'm sorry about that.
No,
I should have
it's-
just said, I hope there's hoverboards like in Back to the Future 2.
No, it's interesting you talk about, because it again kind of taps into that idea of the rise of technology, and obviously we were talking about social media earlier and how people curate themselves, and I just wanted to quickly come back to one thing, and like talking about celebrities and that idea of curation. Like now that everyone's got a phone, they're asking you for selfies all the time, someone might be videoing any interaction you have on the streets. Do you think, rather than even just say for paparazzi and on social media, is there a pressure now do you think, for celebrities to be constantly wearing a mask wherever they go, almost?
I think so, to some degree. I'm going to do a massive name drop right now. I don't know, maybe you want to throw in some kind of jingle. Name drop. Because this is pretty heavy-handed name drop. But I was talking to Tom Cruise once.
Nice.
And I was asking him about how his experience of being a celebrity had changed over the years. And he pointed to a moment. He said he used to have, there were kind of paparazzi that would wait outside hotel rooms and hotels and stuff for him and studios, and he would come out and there was a sort of certain acknowledgement that you'd leave the building and they would take pictures and then off you'd go with your day. And then he says he remembers coming out once and a woman came up to him with a phone and took a picture of him with her phone, and he said, what's that? And she went, I've got a camera on my phone. And it was the first time he'd seen it, and he said he remembered thinking, wow, everything's going to change. He could sense it even at that moment, And so I guess that was probably a huge turning point where you were sort of, for someone like him, you're suddenly much more mindful of the fact that the traditional days of the paparazzi with cameras and the sort of gentleman's agreement, I'll take some pictures of you coming out of the hotel, getting in your car, then I leave you alone, had kind of suddenly changed. And now, obviously, everyone has a camera and everyone's a paparazzi to some degree. And anyone who's in the public eye is conscious that they never quite know when they're being filmed. I've got friends, who've been filmed or photographed when they're asleep on a plane, or, you often sense it if I'm on the tube and someone will their camera will rise up and they'll have forgotten to take the little click noise off. And it's pretty obvious what you're up to.
Yeah.
And so, of course, you have to be very aware of that. You can't be yourself because you don't want to control. You want to be able to control what people know of you.
How do you react in those situations? Like, are you tempted to go over and say, "Sorry, do you mind actually not taking a picture?" Or do
Well,
you
of course,
Just swoop in and grab the phone from above.
No, but it's very intrusive, isn't it? I mean,
Yeah,
it's a very,
no, it is, yeah.
It's a very, yes, you've made an exchange in some ways that you get the privileges of being, in the public eye and make movies and do all these amazing things, and that's great. And you understand there's a certain exchange that happens, but nevertheless, you're going about your day. It's a little bit creepy if someone takes a picture. The other thing you notice is that if you're walking down the street and someone knows who you are and they are with a friend and they walk past you, they will often wait till they've walked past you to say, "Oh, that was," but they never walk far enough. You can always hear them saying it. And it's a warning to everyone. You have to walk further than you think if you're going to talk about someone behind their back, all right? And that's good advice for office life, your friends.
Yes.
It doesn't matter if they're a famous person or not. Just walk further than you think before you start gossiping about someone,
Right.
all right? Little word to the wise.
Thanks very much.
Yeah.
That's brilliant. Thank you.
Fiction prediction.